like it to be a conversation and there's just a camera over the shoulder.
Accept that there's people that are going to be better than you at that specific thing. So I know there's going to be someone that's better at editing.
You know, and you could sit around and say, well, I haven't started on the main script because I'm waiting for it to be inspired, right? When you show up and you sit down and you go to your spot, the inspiration does come.
If I don't put my skin in the game, shed a bit of blood, how could I expect for the return I'm hoping for to be as severe as the sacrifice?
A lot of people will be like, I could never do, I have no idea how to do, and I didn't either for the most part. It's just sitting down and taking the time to learn it once, and then when you do, it's like, oh my gosh.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Imitates Life with your host, Tripp Fusco. This season, season 2, is all about the hero's journey and making oneself better by creating a progression plan for yourself based off the hero's journey to achieve a goal of some sort. I would prefer it be a creative goal for you, but what are you going to do? Last episode, we talked about how I was going to kind of go about this, starting with the ideas from John Doerr, James Clear, Stephen Covey, and a couple other thought leaders in this world. So kind of jumping off, I want to talk about how I broke this out. So I used Gemini to kind of help build a structure for myself based off of what my goal was. My goal is to grow this community, grow this channel as much as I possibly can in 1 quarter. So 3 months time. I'm starting in the middle of a quarter, so it'd be great to be able to just streamline it and get it done by by the end of the first quarter. But it's most likely going to be just kind of in between 2 different ideas or 2 different periods. It's going to be my own arbitrary timeline, if you will. Thanks to Gemini, I was able to kind of, like I said, build a structure to kind of get started. How I did that was creating some journal prompts with the help of this AI, and we went together and iterated until I got a good idea of a journaling session that you could be doing where you could either be doing it in one go and just go through all phases, or you could just do it each phase on a different day, starting with your really rough ideas, your ideas that are kind of like vague, and those musings. I get this way, like my inspiration hits and it's not necessarily a whole story, but it's like one visual metaphor, like one image. And then that kind of evolves into more. There's these ideas that kind of come to me. And the idea for this one was hero's journey, self-progression. How do you get better? How do you become more creative using the hero's journey or something like that? And that kind of evolved into, well, what is it going to be for me? You know, I need to find my purpose. That was what we came to, you and I came to the agreement that I would do for the season. And this system I've built is hopefully going to help do that. It starts with a journaling prompt that helps tease out those ideas and then refine them and then create them into like production materials. Like imagine your raw idea is the raw ore in the ground. You have to figure out where the ore is in order to dig in the right place. So that's what the first phase is. The second phase is going to be, refinement or digging up, taking in those ideas and processing them a little bit. Then you go through a refinement phase where you kind of take the rough idea that you've pulled out of the ground and you create meaningful materials, resources that you can build something out of. Ultimately, I like the idea of maybe making a diamond ring, right? You mining the earth for the silver, for the gold, for the diamonds. You take out those rough gems. You forge them, you cut them, you clean them, you polish them. And then at the end, you have this overall product, this diamond ring or, whatever piece of jewelry it is. And I love the idea of this because it kind of goes to the hand in hand with the idea of we are creating and we're supposed to be creating. That's the rough idea of what this is going to look like. And I talked about why I wanted to base it off the hero's journey. Very simple. The hero's journey has all these different parts in it that start with, like, you have an idea, you go out, you go for it, you find out that it wasn't as easy as you thought it was, or it wasn't as simple as you thought it was. And you find the complexities along the way, and you have these trials and these errors. And then you find a point where you're just like, I've reached my end, right? I watched a video about the Odyssey, breaking down the whole story of the Odyssey, because it's been some time since I read it in school. And there's a point, the innermost cave, right? That's what I've come to call it. But it's where Odysseus is at this banquet, and they're all singing the tale, or they're all cheering the praises of the best war hero of the Trojan War, being Odysseus, the cleverest and strongest of them all. And he just starts weeping because he's lost his entire crew, and he's gone 10 years he's been trying to get home for 10 years and he can't make it home. And it's at this point, he's humbled so much. Beginning the story, I'm Odysseus. I'm the man they write songs about. At this point, he doesn't even want to admit to who he is. He's so ashamed of who he is. He is brought so low. So that's the innermost cave, right? That happens in process. The middle is one of the hardest parts of any journey. I think I'm wearing my Noah Kahan shirt. In one of his songs, he says, I saw the end, it looks just like the middle. One of the most beautiful lines. I loved it. When I hear that every time, it just talks about how you can keep pushing, and you're just going to keep pushing, and you don't know when you're done because it just feels the same. But also, you think this whole time you're going to get to this point where you're like, oh my gosh, there's going to be some relief. There's going to be some, and it really is just more of the middle, or the beginning, you have all this energy, and then the middle, you have to push through. And then at the end, you have to continue to push through, and you keep thinking you're going to get to these checkpoints, and you got to just keep trying. You got to keep going. So that's why we loosely base this off of the hero's journey, because you're building your own story. You're the author of your own life. And that's what this progression plan is going to be. For me, again, it was finding purpose. So I went through and came up with some really interesting insights. One of the first things we talked about as a journaling prompt comes from Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And it was it's from the chapter, Begin with the End in Mind. And in his book, he talks about this thought process, this thought experiment where you picture your funeral. And certain people speak at your funeral. Friends, family, coworkers. He wants you to go through and think about what people would say, what you would want them to say. If it's your coworker, he was very diligent and detail-oriented and maximized shareholder value, whatever the case may be. Or your family, you want them to say stuff like, he was really detail-oriented and maximized shareholder value. We rarely saw him because he was such a hard worker. That's what you really want your family to say. And then your friends, you want them to say things like, oh, he was so competitive. He was really good on the golf course, but where he really shined was in the details. He always said the devil was in the details. So he's very detail-oriented and was great at maximizing shareholder value because, again, we live in a capitalist society, and that's all that matters. But more realistically, you have different answers for those different people. But throughout that process, what I found, because the prompt that we kind of came together with, it was a little less morbid. It was 80th birthday, and it's what they're saying about you on your 80th birthday. So what I kind of came away with was some of the same themes for all of this. Like relationships were a really big thing with me, connecting with people, finding out how to make people feel heard or seen, highlighting people, helping people connect. The last one is problem solving. Problem solving, there's an abundance of problems in this world. There's no need to say this, that, or the other thing, right? You have time and resources and the ability to solve problems. You should be solving problems. I don't know. That's my opinion. So this is some of the stuff that kind of came out of that first thought exercise, that exercise of, all right, what would your what would your siblings say at your funeral? What would your kids say at your funeral or your 80th birthday? What would your coworkers say? Or would they say like, oh, this was the project that like really set it apart? The third one they asked for was community leader, which I thought was really interesting because it talks about the world outside yourself. In the previous episode, we talked about Ikigai, and that was a big part of the framework for this is finding your Ikigai. And if you don't know what that is, it's a Japanese philosophy that's been westernized to kind of fit in capitalism as well. So the idea has 4 parts. What are you good at? What does the world need? What do you enjoy doing? And what can you get paid for? That's the westernization of Ikigai. And this prompting kind of broke it down where, you ask your family, right? You probably enjoy time with your family. You ask your coworkers. You ask your community because that's the world larger than yourself. So that's the first part of phase 2, right? That's kind of establishing who you are as a person, right? The second part of phase 1 is going to be figuring out flow. We've talked about flow a lot on this, but basically what flow is when you get into hypofrontality, where your executive function kind of shuts off, you go into an autopilot and you're just doing things. You're just going, you're moving, you're vibing, and time kind of slips away because you're so immersed into whatever you're thinking about or doing. So the second part of phase 1 was asking, when in the last month were you in flow? For me, it's doing things like this, setting up my camera, setting up lighting, creating ways to capture it, editing it, and as well as connecting with people. There was one thing that I've been doing a lot recently is just drawing. When I kind of have nothing to do and I've watched a bunch of TV, I'm just like, let me just sketch something interesting, or just try and sketch something new. And I've seen the progress. Or another aspect is when I pick up my guitar and I kind of just noodle, or I play the same song that I've played 1,000 times. There's no shortage of things you can be doing to create. But what I like about this one is in the last month, right? Recency bias. What have you done that has put you in a state of flow? Then we go into the third part. Then we go to the third part of phase 1, which talks about top 3 problems you see in the world. What are the top 3 problems you see in the world? Is it the loneliness epidemic? Is it the obesity epidemic? Whatever the case is, think of 3 problems, right? Getting into that framework of Ikigai and building up this idea. And what it's doing is, again, these are quick journal prompts. They don't have to be a ton of thought. They can be a ton of thought, but when you're listing 3 things, just list the first 3 things. The first one, the first prompt, I think the family, the colleague, and the community leader, that one you really want to put some time and effort into, really think about. But those other 2, you kind of just first come, first, serve. Because there's probably a lot of things that, you've reached flow state in. You probably reached flow state cooking. You probably reached flow state writing. You probably reached flow state going to the bathroom. I don't know what it is. My coworker or my buddy and I like to talk about how like when you eat and you're so hungry that you just start just diving in. It's a Instagram trend, and it's like, when you're halfway through the plate and you don't even know how much time has passed and you're just like in flow state or something like that. He made fun of me. he teased me once because like I was just like mowing down this food, and he got halfway through the plate and he's like, I can't have another bite. We got the same thing. And I was like, yeah, me too. My plate's demolished. There is not a single ounce of food left on this plate. And he's like, man, you really hit flow state on that one. It could be that, right? So then we break, that's phase 1, is kind of, again, teasing out those ideas, taking out that ore, that raw ore from the ground. And now we're going to kind of go through the process of making it usable. So phase two is, for me, this whole idea was for finding purpose, right? That's what this is built off of. I'm going to adapt this to be a more generalized progression process, a more generalized self-growth resource. But for mine being, what is my purpose? the next phase was, okay, looking at Ikigai, fill out this sentence. I can use my blank of blank to help solve the blank, right? So I can use my skill of video editing to help solve the obesity epidemic. Those were examples that I used earlier, right? I could use my skill of sketching. I could use my passion for sketching, like drawing, to help fight the loneliness epidemic. My actual one was I can use my skill of conversation to help solve the isolation epidemic. That's what I named the loneliness epidemic. Ever since moving in by myself, I've kind of realized people feel very isolated these days. And even when you're with people, you feel alone. You can be texting someone all day and feel alone. And so how, that hurt me because one, I've experienced it myself. Two, in the first part, I found this kind of repeating pattern of, Tripp always loved connecting people. Tripp always went the extra mile for people, helping people tell their story, helping people feel connected. That is a huge part of my journey. Actually, in reading 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, there's a part where you're supposed to generate your own personal mission statement. If you're in a family, you can even create a family mission statement. And it's where you break down values, what things are valuable to you, like what ideas do you value? And then you build a sentence off of how you get one from the other. So like mine was basically broken down into, I want to help people connect through creativity or with creativity. So either I'm helping people who don't feel like they're creative, don't do enough creative acts in their life, be more creative, but also it means helping people actually connect with each other through creative ideas. And so it was really funny that this resurfaced again, because I came up with that whole process in 2022. I did that thought experiment, came out with that. It's 2026 and I'm getting the same answers. That's the first part of phase 2, the fourth part of this process, this journal prompt process. It's taking what you had in that first one and then refining it and making it into a usable thing. You now have a mission statement. Mine was, I can use my skill of conversation to help solve the isolation epidemic. Now, you take that a step further, and this is where that capitalism, that westernization of it comes into play. How can you make money? The reason I wanted to exclude this, but the AI, having researched Ikigai and done some deep research into the westernization of it, made a great suggestion of, well, you have to support this process, right? So if you want this to be your hobby, if you want this to be your side project, if you have enough money coming in from your main job, don't worry about this step. I mean, it's nice to think about the sustainability. That's what I thought. Let's take that, scratch that, and think about this step in the sense that, like, how can this become sustainable? How can you make enough money off this process to just keep doing it? Like, you don't have to make a profit. You just want to sustain it. The question is, how can you make this sustainable? How can you keep this going off its own momentum? And my thought was, okay, well, community is an aspect of it, and conversation is a big part of that, and creativity is a big part of that. What if I just made a community of people who either want to be more creative or people who are creative, right? Just a group of people helping each other, right? Connecting through creativity. You see where I'm going with this, connecting with creativity. And so the idea is to create a community of people who just want to meet people or create stuff or try new things. The first part of that is this podcast. I think that is a huge, easy step for me. I can set this up and just get going on a Saturday afternoon. Or I can get people together and say, hey, let's do a sketch night where we all look at the same piece of fruit and we all sketch it. And then we, compare and we share notes and we say, oh, hey, I learned this when I took art class in college and it's really helped my artwork. This might be something you can do. And then flip flop, oh, that's so crazy because I took art class in middle school and that was the last time I did anything like this. And I feel like I want a different aesthetic than that, but that's a really good point. And I like that. And so you can just kind of again, connect with the creativity. Big part of this. I don't want there to be judgment. I mean, judgment and opinions can really ruin a lot of things. The second part of the phase 2, part 1B is how do you keep this sustainable? How do you make this something that can keep going? So then you get into the 5th prompt. So it's the second part of phase 2. And it's comes from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And it comes from a lot of other things too. Like one of the books I just read was called How Do You Talk When You Talk to Yourself? It's all about self-talk. And he was saying that the big idea is to engage your identity. And James Clear says the same thing, right? It's a big part of Atomic Habits. It's not, oh, I wish I could go to the gym. It's, I am the kind of person who goes to the gym. And when you do that, when you say things like that, you end up going to the gym because you have identified it and you're programming your brain to be saying, I go to the gym, right? I am a creative person. I do creative things. This is a big foundational part of this progression plan, right? So you want to do something, you want to set a goal, you have to already, and this is the funny thing is, we talk about manifestation in this world a lot today, and a lot of people say things that sound really crazy, but the neuroscience backs it up. I'm not a neuroscientist, so don't ask me to be one. But the neuroscience backs this up, that when you say to yourself that you do something and you say it enough, it becomes a belief. And then once it's a belief, it's a part of your identity. Creating an identity through I am statements or I do, whatever the statement is, to help force you through your programming to become that person. You are no longer the person who thinks about doing stuff. You're no longer the person who has these vague ideas of who I am and what I want. You have actionable ideas now. You have resources that you can pull from. I like editing. I like video production. I like sketching. I want to solve this problem. I am the kind of person who, when I have free time on my weekends, starts making and recording podcast episodes so that I can help with the loneliness epidemic, the isolation epidemic through conversation. And what I love about that is just it's such a simple one because just talking to someone at my coffee shop feels like it's part of that overall purpose in my life. Phase 2, part 2 is the identity switch. Phase 3. Now this part starts to come from John Doerr, giving you those actionable steps. So you want to create a 90-day target. That's 3 months. That was the part that is a quarter. You want to create an objective and a key result, and then you want to create systems that get you there. So phase 3 is setting those goals. What is your objective? And the idea is to not just set an objective, but to make it big. Make it something lofty. You're reaching for this. So at the end of the 90 days, I came away with, I want 1,000 YouTube subs. I want to record 12 episodes. And I want to have 3 social events that facilitate this idea. That's 1 a month. Then it goes back to that, who am I? And you're going to create more I am statements. So my objective, all right, the 6th prompt was, what is your 90-day target? What is your stretch goal? Mine was, over the next 3 months, I will build a community of people looking to create and connect. And there's some pretty serious phrasing this. I will do this, not I will try. I will do this. Again, engaging that part of your brain that says, I'm this person. I do this stuff. It's hack the day. And so then you build in your objective. Build a community of people, connection, looking to create and connect. There's the connection, there's the creativity, and I will build this community. Then part 7 is creating the key results. Key results are the way you measure success, right? So again, you want these to be stretched. You might hit them. Just be careful, because you might actually hit what you want to. I want 1,000 YouTube subs, I want 12 episodes, and I want 3 events. I think that is lofty. I don't think, I think it goes down in loftiness as it happens, but 1,000 YouTube subs in 3 months feels Herculean. It feels like I'm going to not get there, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to build, systems, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that in a second. The second part is 12 episodes. Well, I can do episodes like this. That ultimately just comes down to me and my time. That's 4 episodes a month. And that seems doable. That's 1 episode a week. If I do multiple interviews in one day, then it's not. It's a little bit easier. You see what I'm talking about. And then social events. And then you kind of think about like, okay, well, I can kind of cheat the system a little bit. What if I have one of those social events, and of that social event, I get 3 episodes, So boom, 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 you're going back and forth. Number 7 is, what are those key results? Now, what's important about these key results is at the end of the 90 days, you're going to check back in with yourself. You're going to say, okay, did I hit my target? I didn't get 1,000 subs. I only made 8 videos. And I had 1 event. I didn't even do an event. No events. Okay. So you have to look at 2 things at that point. Either 1, your key result was wrong. You were looking at the wrong thing. Or 2, your systems were wrong. And we're going to get into systems later. But just know that that's why you have the key results. Because as you're going toward your objective, that line, that's that arbitrary line that you're headed for, you want to measure success. You come up with the success. You dictate what that is. If you don't hit that, you can change it at the end of the 90 days. If you exceed that, then you gotta think bigger. That's a cool problem to have. 8th prompt. Again, I am statements. This is going to get a little bit more granular. This is going to be, how do I do this? Well, okay, if I need to put out 12 episodes, who does that? A content creator. I am a content creator. I wish I could do that. I am that, right? I am helping people. I am creating daily. I am this, that, and the other thing. Create those statements that support yourself in that goal, in achieving that key result, in achieving that objective. The second part of this 8th prompt is creating a daily challenge. This comes from James Clear. And he talks about coupling the habit you want to add with a habit you already have. So think of something you do every day. If you're trying to become more creative, in a previous episode, I said the bar to creativity is so low. All you have to do to be creative is to think. Just use your imagination. So if you want to be creative and do something creative every day, spend the 2 minutes you're brushing your teeth thinking about stand-up premises. Think about if you were making a movie, writing a book, what that would be. Think about product ideas. Think about different aspects. Think if you like playing resource games, strategic games, right? I don't know anything about Warhammer, but I walk by a Warhammer place all the time. So imagine you're a Warhammer player and you spend that 2 minutes brushing your teeth thinking of a scenario you were in and being like, well, how could I have done that differently? And then you could also just be asking yourself the question of like, how can I be more creative tomorrow? Or whatever the case is. But you have that dead time. 1, you brush your teeth every day, daily challenge. And then 3, you're going to build the process of, okay, well, when I'm brushing my teeth, I think about like knock jokes and writing knock jokes. So the daily challenge for me was to post daily when I make my coffee. I hate that, but that's just the cost of doing business, right? Like if I want to help people, I got to be where people can see me. So I got to post content. And if I post daily, I can get to that 1,000 subs a lot faster. The 9th prompt is figuring out how to couple those two. So I got ahead of myself. 8th prompt is the I am statements and creating a daily challenge. What is the thing you need to do? The 9th prompt is figuring out what you can pair it with to create your new daily challenge. So mine was, when I have coffee, I will post a story, post or reel, that YouTube short, whatever it is, that supports what I'm trying to build. And then the 10th thing is summarizing all of the content you've put together. Because at this point, you should have an idea of what you want your legacy to be. You should have an idea of what you're good at, what you enjoy, what problems you think are important, and then you can start figuring out how those fit together. Then you build an objective off of that. You figure out what the key results are. Then you build systems to achieve those, and I am statements that help support your idea. Then at the end of the 90 days, right, when you get to reevaluate this, you go back to, I think it would probably be part 6, right? You can reevaluate, okay, well, did I reach my objective? Did I build a community of people who want to create and connect? I feel like I did. All right, well, let's check in on my key results. Did I get 1,000 YouTube subs? I got 1,200 YouTube subs. That's amazing. I far surpassed this. Did I make 12 episodes? No, I made 4 episodes. Okay, I was way back on that. But clearly the episodes worked because I have 1,200 subs. So then you can start thinking about how that works. All right, well, I didn't have 3 social events. I had 10 social events. Well, that's why I didn't make so many episodes, is because I did this. But now that I've done so many of these, that's the beauty of this, is that at the end of the 90 days, you can do that. For the summary section, you would list what your mission is, what your objective is, what the key results are, when you'll do it by, and what your daily challenge is. What is the system you're using to achieve these things, right? So if you have 3 key results, you don't want just one system, although mine, I feel like, encompasses all 3, because if I have episodes, I make a post, right? If I'm trying to get followers, I make a post. If I'm trying to get people to do a social event, I make a post. So that's why I feel like I just needed one. So you summarize all that and then you write it down. And here's why. All right, I'm going to pull up my phone to get into the next part, which is the empirical data. Yeah. Didn't expect that much from a big dumb guy like me, huh? Yeah. The empirical data is this study from Dr. Gail Matthews in 2015. They had a sample of 267 participants from various professions and countries, ages 23 to 72. The idea was to separate them into 5 groups with varying levels of goal setting commitment. The levels were: group 1 was just think about your goals. Group 2 was to just write your goals down, think about them, write them down. Group 3 wrote their goals down and formulated action commitments. What are the steps you're going to take toward your goal? Group 4 did all of the previous steps. They thought of their goal, they wrote it down, and they created an action plan with the addition of telling a friend about it for accountability. And then 5, all of the above, plus they sent weekly progress reports to that friend. Turning that accountability into accountability buddy is something someone said once. What came out of this, the thinking group only, people who just thought about their goals, were 43% likely to achieve their goals. But the people in group 5 that had systems in place, they had accountability, they had written down goals, commitment actions were 76% likely to achieve. The probability increase was 33 to 42% more likely. There was a myth that there is like this study that they talk about, Harvard Yale study, that it happened at some point that said 3% of students with written goals earned 10 times more than their peers. It's a myth. It doesn't exist. But what's really interesting is 76% of people who created a system for success actually did the work, right? 76% is a lot. In a previous episode, I said 75%, and I was just written down goals. I don't know where I got that information. It clearly wasn't sourced well. And it could have been predating the study, since the study was in 2015. But we do know now that when you have a system in place with written down goals, action items, and then you get people to keep you accountable, and then you create a system to track it. Another great book I read was Triggers. In that book, it talked about how there's cues and responses, but it also created this great daily check-in that you can do with yourself. And the author talked about how what they did was they had someone in their life call them for this check-in, right? Hey, did you make videos today? Did you post videos today? Did you and then it's on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Did you try to do this? Did you try to do this? And so it was like on a scale of 1 to 10, did you try to be a good son? On a scale of 1 to 10, did you try to be a good brother? On a scale of 1 to 10, did you try to post? Well, if I posted, that's a 10. If I didn't, that's a 1. But maybe I worked really hard at a post and I just didn't get it over the finish line and had to go to bed. That's an 8. It's really about accountability. So that's just one small way you can do this. But that's what we're doing here, right? The system that we created is, again, taking that rough, vague idea you have, that goal, and turning it into reality. Telling yourself that you're that person, writing down the goals, creating systems in which you achieve those goals, tracking those goals, right? There's that accountability. And then maybe you even include a friend in it. That's what's really, really cool about this. Now, there was an increase in just writing your goals. So like if you think about your goal, 43%, that's the baseline. Every step after that was an increase. I think including more people more often than not is a good idea. With all this information, the empirical data, the process for how to find your purpose, and the idea of generating with AI a system for yourself, I've come up with an idea of what this season's going to be. In the previous episode, my idea was, okay, this is the hero's journey. You have go, you have, crossing the threshold, you have trials and tribulations, you have the meeting the goddess, midpoint, innermost cave, then you have the return to the old world, then you have the steps after that, combining what you were with what you learned, and then coming out on top, coming out a new person, right? A new version of yourself. And so I think that this is the crossing the threshold part of that. So that first part was establishing who I am, where I am. This crossing the threshold episode is getting into the next step. So we're going into trials and tribulations. I'm going to be posting. I am going to be failing. I am going to be trying. I am going to be this person. I am going to be a content creator. I am going to be doing these things. That is the trials and tribulations. I think the next step is going to be, an evaluation point where I kind of look back and see, okay, what have I learned so far? Have I reached a point where I feel like, am I at a different beat in the story? Because obviously when you're going through it, you can't necessarily tell yourself what the end is. But what's cool about progress is if you get 1% better every day, each day you're going through that cycle of the hero's journey. We're going to see at the end of the 90 days where I'm at. And I can kind of do a debrief episode of, okay, here's what this was, here's what this was, here's this was. I'm going to do a check-in, I think maybe midway through or just when I feel like it. That seems more my speed. But I'm trying to get interviews. I'm trying to build episodes. I'm trying to build posts. I'm going to be doing a lot of this stuff. I'm going to be taking my Saturdays, stripping away a lot of the fun stuff and doing this. This is work, but this is work that I have fun doing. I enjoy. I'm in flow state right now. I feel like it's meaningful. I do. You know, whether or not I monetize it, I think my life outside of this pays for this. And so I think this is soul enriching, which is an investment all in itself. Next steps after that are obviously, like I said, doing that 90-day check-in and saying, hey, okay, what were those trials and tribulations like? What was a positive that turned out to be not that big a deal? What was a negative that turned out to be a bigger deal than I thought, or not that big a deal? What was the biggest hurdle I had to overcome? What was a point that what was something that immediately just like boosted me, gave me tools I didn't know I needed? And then going into that return session, what's the next steps from there, right? How are we, maybe I decide I don't want to do this anymore, right? Maybe that's what I come away with. But I think it's funny because I was saying like earlier, I was circling the idea of what my purpose is. I feel like I found it in this. And at the end of the 90 days, I can say, you know what, like, is this worth it to me? Is this what I want to be doing? Is this something that I'm good at? Is this something that's making money? Is this something that's not? I can go through and answer those questions. But right now I have the actionable steps. So if I were to break this out into a resource for you, because maybe you have your purpose. Maybe you're one of the best in the world at something, but you want to get better at something else. Here's what I would do to break this into actionable steps for any self-improvement journey. But since this is, again, a creative podcast focused on creativity, let's say that you want to become an expert seamstress. You want to start creating with a sewing machine you got for Christmas. It's going to look a little bit different, right? That first stage, of, all right, what do I want? You can kind of take that away and go straight into the OKRs of it, right? Your objective is to become a world-class seamstress, or your objective is to debut a catalog at Fashion Week in Milan. All right. What are your key results? How do you get there? What would need to happen in order for you to either get close to or be at where you want to be? Well, you got to learn how to use the sewing machine. But maybe it's a little bit loftier. Maybe it's produce 100 garments this year or in the next 90 days or something crazy like that. Or use 100 different pieces of fabric. That would cost some serious money. But use 100 different pieces of fabric. Create a custom wardrobe for your friends, or create a line of clothing that you give to your friends or sell to your friends. Make $50 profit off of this business. These are the OKRs, or the KRs you're going to be creating, the key results. And then at the end of the 90 days, you can say, did I hit this? Did I not? Then you can go into the idea of how you make this happen. If you need to make 100 different garments in 90 days, you got to be making more than one a day. So maybe your weekends, maybe you leverage your weekends. Well, I have a block between the farmer's market and my family dinner every Sunday. And there's that 4-hour block where I just sit and watch TV. Well, okay, I'll throw like lo-fi music on, and that's when I will do a little bit of sewing. Okay, that's not necessarily the idea we're going for here, because we want to tie it to something that already exists. You're coupling it with a habit you already have. Well, that's normally when I do my laundry. Okay, well, while your laundry is washing in that cycle, you sew. But when it's drying, you sew. Until you're folding laundry, it's going to be a lot of laundry. I'm sorry, this is a bad example, but maybe you like laundry. Maybe you work in a laundromat. I don't know. The idea is you want to be a world-class seamstress, so you have to go about it. But again, there's other aspects. It's not just creating. It's like physically creating. It's sketching. It's getting your ideas. So maybe it's come up with 100 different sketches, right? Whatever the case is. Create a daily challenge. Create a system. Create your key results. What is your objective? And then summarize all of that to make sure you can get forward. You also have to make it frictionless. You got to make it easy on yourself. You don't want it to be this task that you have to overcome. I always have a hard time going for a walk at the end of the day, but it's so much easier to just be like, dude, just walk to the end of the street. It's not that far. Just all you have to do is put on your shoes right now. You're in exercise clothing. Just go for a walk. Just put on your shoes. That's a lot easier than, finding the bare minimum, a lot easier. Make it frictionless. You already have your socks on, right? Or your shoes are ready for you to just put them on, leave your exercise clothes out is something James Clear says for if you want to work out first thing in the morning, leave your clothes out the night before. That makes it frictionless. That's where the idea of going to the gym for 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, that's it. That gets you there. The friction is leaving once you're there. That would be the idea. I think you still want to get into that teasing out mindset. Ikigai was for the idea of building your own purpose, but the teasing out would be just kind of like maybe even just ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you use. Like, what are some prompts that can help me better understand what I want to do, why I want to do it, and how I want to do it? As in, like, I've always liked the idea of playing guitar. That's a vague idea. Well, do you want to learn how to play any song? Do you want to learn how to read sheet music? Do you want to write your own music? Those are three different things. They are also steps to kind of each other. So that's something you could do. The idea is to just start with a journaling session where you get all your ideas on paper. And then you can figure out, underline, circle different things that keep coming up. The whys, the hows, the whats. Then you get into, okay, what's my objective from this? Do I have an objective? Do I want to be a classically trained guitar player? Do I want to be the next folk singing sensation? Do I want to just be able to play music at a campfire? Pick up the guitar, figure out, what you need to do, create those OKRs, create that objective, key results, systems, and go for it. I think, like I said, this isn't stuff that I'm coming up with. It's ideas from thought leaders. It's AI created. It's very simple. The magic is when you make it about you. So start with a journal prompt. That's all you got to do is journal, right? Think about what you would want to be able to do, what you would want to be able to create, and then figure out what the bare minimum system needs to be in order for you to achieve this. And then keep telling yourself that you are that, right? I am someone who practices guitar every day. I am someone who creates 10 outfits in a week. I am someone who sketches for 30 minutes every day. I am someone who does that. That's probably one of the easier steps to do. It's just telling yourself, and tell yourself until you believe it, right? There's no shame in that. It is cringy at first. I went for a walk this morning, and on this walk, I just said, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say this out loud. I'm going to talk to myself, right? I am a talented person. I am a creative person. I find ways to create meaning in my life through creative pursuit. And I just started kind of going off of that. I am someone who believes in themselves. I am someone who's confident in their abilities to get things done. I am capable. I am confident. I am comfortable with who I am. All of these things help to establish that mindset and shift that mindset into a positive frame. Positivity creates positivity, right? When you are positive, your progress becomes positive. I thought of one today. I think this is a bar, and I can't wait to get clipped on YouTube or Instagram, and people are like reacting to how stupid this sounds. They're going to be like, oh, he really thought of something. He really thought he thought of something. It's not that cool. What's not good enough tomorrow is better than yesterday. That's the mindset you should have. What's not good enough tomorrow is better than yesterday. Do better today so you're better tomorrow is the idea, right? It's just a fun, I thought it was like there was a better way I thought of it this morning. That just, again, like I said, I'm going to get clipped so hard for that. Yeah, I'm going to be clipped. People are watching this enough to be like, oh, this guy thinks he's really got something. I'm the only one who watches these videos. What's not good enough tomorrow, or what's not good enough for tomorrow, should be better than yesterday. Where you're at today should be better than yesterday, but not better than tomorrow. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. It's a million ways to say the same thing. With that being said, thank you to another episode of Imitates Life with your host, me, Tripp. I thank you for your support. I thank you for commenting, liking, sharing, following. I hope you can help me on my journey to getting 1,000 subscribers and building a community here in Arizona and maybe even abroad, outside of Arizona, of people who want to create and connect and get more out of life. Right? So join along, follow along. Thank you for your support. Again, if you like this episode, if you feel like all I did was repeat other people's ideas, because that was kind of what I did, there's a mic right here. That's why I keep leaning down to talk to it. That looks so suggestive. Uh-oh. Well, if you think I was just taking other people's ideas and just reframing them, welcome to the internet. Have a good day.